Welcome, everybody, to the Gimmick Infringement Podcast. I am Brad Winchester, and with me, as always, is my tag team partner, not partner. I don't know. Tyler, we just recorded. Tyler McDowell Blanken, and with us is a very, very special guest.
Yeah, absolutely. So excited to welcome this gentleman to GI. He is co-host of Coexisting with Rob and Maggie. Fightful's own Rob Wilkins is here. Rob, welcome to GI. How are you?
Thanks, guys, for having me. I'm doing great. I'm very happy to be here. And when you guys DM'd me saying, "Hey, do you want to come on our show?" and I was obviously going to say yes, and then you told me we were going to talk about Sting, so I was like, yeah, absolutely, let's do this. Talking about Sting is just, I couldn't turn it down. So obviously, it made it even better. So talking about one of the GOATs it's a pleasure thank you again for having me, because this is going to be fun. So, but I'm doing great.
I can't wait, man. I can't wait because I'm so excited to screw up the intro. Tyler, how many times have I gone through that thing and just never Potna? I turned into like half Eddie Kingston there.
Half Eddie Kingston. It felt a little more Boston to me.
It did. Yeah, Potna. Yeah, get up, Potna yacht. Yeah, it did go that direction. But we're gonna hit part one off with the Jim Crockett and WCW era. We also have Sting pre-Sting. We could talk about. We're going to focus on Sting. The probably has to be considered in the all-time pantheon, the upper echelon, top tier of wrestlers of all time, in my mind, without question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And really, on the eve of Sting's final match at AEW Revolution, Brad, you and I knew that we had to do something to honor the icon. We even saw him live at AEW Dynamite in Phoenix. We lucked into seeing Sting's final match in Arizona, him and Darby becoming champs. So yeah, really excited to get into part one of our Sting series. Like you said, looking at the Crockett WCW era. So we're thinking 1987 through 2001. Guys, I want to pass it to you in terms of favorite memories of Sting during this time. Of course, we have the Starrcade 1987 debut. We have the feuds with the Four Horsemen, Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan. And then my favorite era, or the one that's kind of most vivid in my mind, is the NWO feud and Sting with NWO Wolfpack. So we should even pass it to our esteemed guest, Rob. This first era of the icon, what do you remember most about Sting here?
What did it for me was the first time I ever saw him was on the Superstation, TBS, as Shivani always called it, or the Mothership, as he would call it.
Mothership, and, yes.
I saw this guy who was just like the epitome of just awesome. He was just, I'm like, who is this guy and why does he look so cool? Because he had that beach blonde hair and he was strong and he had this face paint where it was just always like a bright color, and he just looked cool, and he screamed like every once in a while, and he just looked like he was having fun. He was a good guy. That's one thing that always stood out about him, was he was always the good guy. He was energetic, and there was something about and I didn't know this until I got more into wrestling, like the online part of it. But I was always enamored, this guy looks like Ultimate Warrior. Ultimate Warrior looks like him. But I like this guy a little bit more because he talks. The other guy, he talks, but I don't understand him. So that's what stood out with me as Sting. But Sting always teamed up with the guys I liked, and he was better too. His matches, I felt, were more dramatic, I would say. And that was something that always stood out to me, with NWA and Jim Crockett matches and WCW. That's what stood out, is his matches were always more dramatic compared to some of the other wrestling I watched. And that's what I liked about Sting. And he always felt like he always overcame. So that's what I like.
What's your favorite Sting match or rivalry from this era?
I was gonna ask, yeah.
From that era,
you a Sting Flair guy?
Yeah, it always goes back to Flair and him. It really does, because I always thought like Ric Flair was just like there was something about him, like just don't like him, and like I always felt like he was talking to me sometimes, like in the stands, because I know I'd be yelling at him, and I don't want him taking my mom to Space Mountain, Yeah. I don't know what he means by that, but my mom loves Disney World, so like I didn't know what he meant by I didn't know what he meant until I got older. I'm like, oh, this son of a, but but like that was the thing. Like there's just something about this guy, and Sting and him it just felt like that was it. That was Sting and Ric Flair, and that was it. Sting just I always liked him. The guy was just awesome.
Well, the Ultimate Warrior thing was always interesting too, because I thought the same thing. It was like, oh, that's very similar. Their face paint kind of went down like that, left their mouth open. Ultimate Warrior was talking about going to other galaxies and stuff, and I didn't know what was happening, but he was cool because he shook the ropes and had ribbons around his arms. But Sting was like, he was out there getting beat down, but then he would do the yell. He would do the hands up and he would yell, and he would do the gorilla thing. So I went back and watched the Starrcade '87 because I hadn't seen it in a very long time. And it was one of those things where I had on and I just wanted to see what it looked like instead of watching the Sting match, and watching his debut in that match. He's been doing this for forever. And he came in as already a star, and he partnered with the Ultimate Warrior before he was Sting and before Ultimate Warrior was Ultimate Warrior. And I think that's really cool that their face paint trajectory kind of went the same direction somehow out of that, which is really interesting. For me, Surfer Sting, especially with that face paint, was just so bright and colorful. And I was born in '82, so he was watching him was just, how can you not root for this guy? He's like, nope, all these guys are cheaters. They're always cheating to win. They're no good. I'm representing all the good in the world. I'm going to go fight him. I thought he was cooler than Hulk Hogan. I wanted to watch him more than Hulk Hogan. To your point, most of my experience with him was on TBS. And then later on was in the not really the NWO, but like around that same time when it felt like all of wrestling went black and white, or that black and tan color, like a sepia color. Everything got washed out except for the pyro in WCW. It was just absolutely a totally different vibe than what I grew up with. I loved early Sting. I thought the matches were really great. I thought they were super athletic and exciting. And it felt like everything mattered. Everything he did in the ring just meant something. It wasn't a throwaway of any of it. It was all really good.
Yeah. I mean, that you hit it right on the head there. I agree that Hulk Hogan was somebody I liked too growing up, but I always looked at it like in a baseball terms of way. Like I don't look at it that way now. I looked at like WWF as American League and WCW, NWA as National League. I still like them both.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm like, when the hell's the World Series? That was my thing. Like that's what I was always waiting for. But yeah. So, but that's how I looked at it. Like I never went against like these are my guys over here. These are my guys over here. So, I liked how you put it though. Like they were just different, and Hogan was just different from a over the top way. Like that, but I knew that was like he was like a Marvel comic book. That was the thing. Like WWF was my like the comic book aspect of my wrestling, and WCW, NWA, Jim Crockett, that was like the dramatic part. Like that was caught my eye because like, why is there blood? Like this is like, what's wrong with me? I like this stuff. Like that, like I'm like 8 years old and I'm like, hold on, he's bleeding. I got to see this, Dad. So, like, but yeah, I mean, you hit it right on the head and I loved it. But Sting caught my eye, and Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes, just all those guys. I just loved it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of things that are good, this is actually the opposite. Rob, you laid it up for me in terms of the Hulk Hogan feud. Starrcade '97, Sting, Hogan. I watched this back maybe a year or two ago, and the feud was so good and was legendary for WCW. I think this is the match that taught me about disappointment in life and how sometimes, you think you have a good thing going, you can still, love something and be passionate for it, but you don't always get what you want. Um, Nevertheless, even though that match obviously is kind of historic for the wrong reasons, for me, Sting being the face of WCW, so much so that I dressed up as him one year. My mom put me in the red face paint. I got to find the picture, but it was just a whole era for me. Him being one of the faces of the Challenger brand. I was into WWF, just like you, Rob, and just like you, Brad. I even had the bed sheets back in the day. The Raw is War.
Heck yeah.
Sting being the face of WCW and never leaving to go to WWE, never jumping ship. To bring up a sports analogy, Rob, it just made me think of those athletes or those entertainers who stay with the same franchise or stay in the same city or stay with the same organization. And there's just a certain like aura that they carry when they never jump ship, even though they probably had opportunities at many points in their career. So looking back on it now, I also have an affinity for him staying loyal to the brand and just, waving that WCW flag through and through.
Yeah. And before we started the show, you guys were talking basketball. It's like Kobe, like that's, you put it right there. Stayed with the team, the home brand, and he wouldn't have left if WCW didn't end. Like he would have still been there. He would have done the hometown discount and everything. And Starrcade '97. I'm a Bret. I've said it on every show like that I've ever been on. Bret Hart's been my guy always. He's always been my guy. And when Bret Hart was part of that pay-per-view, like I loved it. So it's, yeah, that's one of my favorite Sting moments too. Like, is something I go back to, Starrcade '97. And what's interesting is the town I live in, like I was telling you guys about, that's actually where the limo that night, where Sting, like Black Crow Sting, actually, I live less than a mile from where all that like went down, like
that's so cool.
the limousine stuff, like that Nitro.
What?
Like the first time he was like up in the rafters. Yeah,
That's
less than a mile from where I live.
The Crow Sting, that was one of my favorite WCW characters.
Yeah, like right,
iconic.
Less than a mile from where I live. So, and my brother actually used to manage that not at the time, but he managed that Civic Center. So it's kind of cool, like that you brought that up, because I was like thinking about that, how much like that moment, and just Crow Sting, and even the movie The Crow. Like I ended up watching that movie a lot, like over the years when I was a wrestling fan, because even though I knew it wasn't Sting, obviously Brandon Lee, but I like just the aspect of like the action movie and kind of seeing everything. I just enjoyed it.
So I did the exact same thing. I watched the heck out of that movie specifically because of Sting, but I did not watch Star Wars because of Sting. And we know that Sting's mystery partner, the Shockmaster, came out with a bedazzled stormtrooper helmet. I was thinking about that when I was looking back at that era, and he's like, "And we're gonna bring out our mystery partner," and then one of the most disastrous debuts ever. It's
the Shockmaster.
It's the Shockmaster.
I know the Shockmaster was gonna make it here.
But the NWO Wolfpack era, specifically Crow Sting, the 6 months, 8 months where literally nothing happened, just Sting in the rafters, just looking down, not moving, not doing anything. He's just there. To find out later on, it's just because they had no idea what to do with him. And he was just up there going like, I don't know what the feud's going to be. And somehow that got over as much as anything, is absolutely wild and incredible.
Well, what did it for me was, if you think about it, and they obviously had to stop doing the rafter thing when Owen passed away. They had to stop that, which is good. I mean, they could have kept going, but it made sense why they stopped, because
right.
And I believe Sting had even said, like, I'm not doing this anymore, like it was like not only a WCW call, but even he agreed. But that was like that was a superhero moment for the fans, because you get this guy coming down from the rafter, he has his black bat and he's taking people out, and you just like remember seeing the fans just going absolutely nuts for him. And that WCW crowd was always, I mean, in a way kind of crazy, because they would throw drinks. Like you'd always see him throw drinks at Hogan and
the Scott Hall
Paul.
infamous look back.
Yeah, stuff like that. So like they would just go nuts, and you just see that crowd just going ape, and that's what just stands out. And for me, like just that whole stuff, like Sting from the rafters, and I thought I was funny and brought a "It's Ming from the Rafters" sign to a WCW Thunder, and looking back on it now, I'm like, oh God. But no.
It was creative. You were
I had to.
Points there, Rob. That's I like that one.
That's amazing.
Rob, what you shared made me think of the GIF usage that we can now enjoy out of this era of Sting. I can't tell you guys how many times online I've seen people use the GIF of Sting taking off a mask to reveal like, oh, it's me. And then when he's hitting the NWO with the bat, like people in my life who have never even watched wrestling will use that just to like, oh, like New Year, same me, ha ha ha. And I'm like, okay, this is good. Everything is wrestling. Like he's a part of the culture still. This GIF from 1997 we can still use today.
Jeremy Lambert of Fightful, he's done that like on the show, like when
Jeremy
on his Halloween show he's done that where he's taken the Sting mask off and he's actually had the I was like,
all these years later.
I love that. Like I just marked out for it, like, and it's just I love it because it's fantastic stuff. And Sean, he always brings up NWO Sting, like he just absolutely loves Jeff Farmer. So it's a big part because we're all in the same, even us, we're all in the same age range. I was born in 82 myself. So it was, I mean, we all loved wrestling at that same time, and it's just something else. And that's why I think Sting plays so much of a role in our period of time, because it's going to be so weird because we thought we were done with him, unfortunately, for a long time. For a period of time we thought it was over, and then he came back, and now he's going away again. And now it's kind of like one of those things where we don't want you to go, but we understand why you gotta go, and it's hard.
Yeah, we're going to get into all of that and much more. We hope you join us tomorrow for day 2 of our Sting series. We're going to be talking TNA and WWE Sting. I can't wait. Rob, thank you for joining us. You can follow him at Rob Wilkins. You can follow us at GIPod19. We'll see you tomorrow.